Merry Christmas! Welcome to my first ever Anime Dad Holiday Special. I'm dressed up for the occasion, I'm really feeling the spirit, and I just want to get into it by talking about a movie that was recommended to me over a year ago, and that's Tokyo Godfathers. And instead of using a teleprompter or doing anything with my modern technology, I'm feeling the Christmas spirit, and I'm going to read from my Christmas notebook here as we talk about the movie. And instead of being in my regular studio, which is a laundry room, I'm here in the family Christmas room, which is also kind of a dining room / game room. But the idea for watching Tokyo Godfathers as a Christmas special, well, this came up in a Zoom meeting about a year ago. And it was a Zoom meeting with Patreon supporters for a podcast I work with called Hero Movie Podcast. And Matthew Van Diver, who's someone who frequently comments and participates in the YouTube community here, he was on that Zoom meeting. He mentioned that his favorite Christmas movie was Tokyo Godfathers. So that started this ball rolling. It was before I'd even started YouTube. But once I started covering anime for YouTube, I knew this is what I wanted to be my first Christmas special. And it's Tokyo Godfathers, like I said. It was released back in 2003, 18 years ago, directed by Satoshi Kon, and written by Keiko Nobumoto and Satoshi Kon. With the recent death of Keiko Nobumoto, people may be talking about this film just a little bit more than they did in years past, but I think it's wonderful, and I'm happy to hear that more people are going to be talking about it this year. But what really makes this film stand out is that it's a Christmas story that's told from the perceived fringes of society. It gives us a Christmas story from the point of view of people that I don't know that we've really had Christmas stories told from before. And I think that makes this film worth talking about, not only for anime fans, but just for film lovers overall. And the three principal characters of this story are these homeless individuals who form a type of nuclear family unit. An atypical or non-traditional family, but it really does feel like a family dynamic when we see these three characters interact. We have Gen, who's this alcoholic man who sort of serves as the father for this makeshift family. And then Hana is a trans woman who's like the mother of the group. And then rounding out the trio, we have Miyuki. And Miyuki is a teenage runaway who's the group's de facto daughter. But the events of the story of this Christmas story are thrown into motion when the three people are digging through the trash looking for Christmas gifts for one another, and they stumble across an abandoned baby, this infant that inexplicably seems to have been thrown out with the trash. And on its surface, the movie's sort of equal parts comedy and sentimentality with just a touch of tragedy thrown in. But for me, when I look just a little bit deeper, what it's really about is interconnectedness and how we're all kind of part of one community and part of one society. And that this concept of community and society is in actuality much larger than what it might seem to us with our everyday kind of perception of it. The idea of society and community is much more encompassing than what we probably think at first glance. And I'd also like to say that, like, right out of the gate, this trio of main characters seem to care more about society than society seems to care about them. And I mean, this is shown pretty clearly by their concern about this abandoned child, about their desire, this quest that they set upon to return this child to its parents during the week between Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. And then also something else that happens early in the story is they run across this rather large man who's trapped under a car, and instead of looking the other way and going about their quest, they actually stop, take time out of their endeavors to help save this guy. They push the car off of him. And then it turns out that this big guy they find is a high-ranking member of organized crime, of the Yakuza. And then we get to see how this criminal, this person who you could probably argue is more of a negative for society than these three homeless individuals, but society has rewarded him because he lives in a mansion. They go to his daughter's wedding and he has this lavish lifestyle of wealth. But that's just the first of many coincidences that this story relies on. And I think you could say that this story relies on a series of coincidences and random occurrences that just require the utmost of suspension of disbelief. But I am okay with that in this story for a couple of reasons. And first off, it's because this is a Christmas story or a holiday story. And we're kind of used to things like Christmas miracles in a Christmas story. So I think it fits here really well. I mean, the Christmas miracle is a staple of Christmas storytelling. But second, and more importantly to me, and what I take out of this movie and out of this story, is that it shows these characters are interconnected with the world around them. It shows how much they're connected to the community and how much the community's actually connected to them, though they seem so easy to ignore in everyday life. And a couple of times in this movie, characters do refer to themselves as human trash or human garbage. But this movie does a great job of showing that they didn't just spawn up out of the ground in an alleyway. They actually have lives and families and histories and people who think about them and care about them, people that they love and care about as well. They just have wound up in this unfortunate circumstance. And the coincidences that we keep seeing in this movie, well, for me, they just really drive home this idea of interconnectedness, that we're all in this big struggle we call life together, even if we don't feel on first take that we might have a lot in common with somebody else. Now, there is one final coincidence a little bit later near the end of the movie that sets up the big grand finale. And this leads to what I would call a horrific twist that for just a short period of time might make this movie feel more like something for Halloween than for Christmas. But yet more Christmas miracles do turn it around and bring it back to sort of what I was expecting out of the movie by the end. But a criticism I do have about this movie is that all three of our principal characters, well, they seem to have like a better life that's only one phone call away. And what I don't necessarily like about that is it can kind of suggest or imply that the three people find themselves living out on the street without much in the way of resources out in this, what looks like a horribly cold winter. It's snowing nonstop through the movie, and it might make it seem like they're there solely by their own choice. And I don't like that possibility. But again, I can get past that because I think it's done to explore this theme of forgiveness that runs through the film. And more significantly, I think it illustrates how other people are more willing to forgive us than we're willing to forgive ourselves. Because the reason that these folks find themselves in some of these circumstances is that they can't forgive themselves for past things that they perceive as unforgivable in all three cases. But at its core, Tokyo Godfathers is a movie about miracles and family and forgiveness. And all of those, of course, build to the grand theme of love, right? So I probably shouldn't begrudge the movie for portraying forgiveness and that theme the same way that it portrays the other miracles of Christmas and the holidays here. And when I'm watching this movie internally, I feel a mix of responses that are similar to what I felt when I watched things like Raising Arizona, Whitnall and I, or maybe even The Birdcage to a degree. But none of those movies were mentioned as an influence by Satoshi Kon. However, a cowboy movie starring John Wayne and directed by John Ford, a movie called Three Godfathers, well, that is listed as an influence. And I think the title alone can make you see some of those similarities, right? But Three Godfathers is a story about three cowboy outlaws who come across a baby and the experience reforms them. And I wouldn't say that the three protagonists in Tokyo Godfathers need to be reformed per se, but the quest initiated by that infant that they find, well, it does force them to rekindle relationships with their family and friends from the past. It gets them to rekindle a lot of lost connections. And it does finish just a little bit open-ended, so we don't know how much their life changes because of that, but we do know what their lives mean and what potential they have and what pasts they've had. And most importantly, the discovery of this infant, well, I think it leads each of them down a pathway that could lead to self-forgiveness, which sometimes is the most important kind of forgiveness. So I definitely recommend this movie for people like myself who really enjoy non-traditional holiday movies or non-traditional Christmas stories. And it's also a nice reminder that not everyone has the same privilege of celebrating holidays in the same way. However, despite that, people do often find ways to celebrate in their own way and to bring their own meaning to the season. And I have to acknowledge that I'm watching this through my own lens. I mean, I'm a middle-aged, white, cis male from rural America, so I'm going to see this differently than a lot of other people do. But I do think it was pretty progressive for 2003. I think to have this trans woman as one of the principal characters and to treat her with respect, and she's written with the same thought and respect and humanity that all the other characters are, once again, to me, that seems pretty impressive. If you're seeing this through a different lens than I am, then you might see some shortcomings or some issues that I don't pick up on. But I like that aspect of the story. Now, there is some vulgar language from Gin towards Hana, the trans character, but it does feel authentic considering the time and the place and the circumstances that the characters find themselves in. And at the end, I think I'll just leave the appropriateness or the inappropriateness of that language in those comments. Well, I'll leave that up to you as an individual and your individual perspective. But I've got to say, as an anime dad, I do think this is a great movie to watch with your kids if you have like middle-aged or older children. I think it's a good time and a good reason and a good way to talk about things like family and forgiveness, and also our community and the interconnectedness that we might not appreciate, particularly not at a younger age. It could be a good chance to discuss our community and just how many unseen connections that we have to folks that, well, we may prefer just not to see. So once again, just want to say, go out and check it out. I watched it on Amazon Prime. I bought the movie because I enjoyed it that much. I rented it and then turned right around and bought it. You might want to do the same. But with that, I just want to say I'm proud of you for watching anime, and Merry Christmas!
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin. Good tidings for Christmas and a happy